Welcome to the Plant-Centered and Thriving podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Kitchens. Welcome to the show, Plant-Centered listeners. My name is Ashley, and thank you for being here today. I hope you don't get sick of me saying this because, again, thank you for being here. I appreciate you. I hope everything is going smoothly on your end as we're getting ready for the holidays and the end of the year. I still have a lot of shopping to do. Hopefully mom and dad and my sister are not listening because it just comes up so quickly, and I'm sure that you can relate to that. Today, I have an incredibly special guest named Kim Campbell on the show. She is the author of 3 cookbooks: PlantPure Comfort Food Cookbook, PlantPure Nation Cookbook, and the PlantPure Kitchen Cookbook. So with me saying PlantPure, does that ring a bell on who Kim Campbell is? I don't know if you've heard of PlantPure, but we talk about the PlantPure documentary. We talk about the meals, the frozen meal line that she has, all of these great things. So many details that we get into. Kim is also the Director of Culinary Education at PlantPure Nation, where she has developed hundreds of delicious whole food plant-based recipes using no processed oils. She has also led the development of one of the largest plant-based frozen entree lines on the market. And we talk about, especially if you're local or live on the East Coast, where you can get those. Kim graduated from Cornell University with a bachelor's in human service studies with a concentration in nutrition and child development. Her passion has always been about nutrition education for children, families, and adults. So you can see how it was a beautiful match that Kim entered the Campbell family. And if you're not familiar with the Campbell family, Kim is the daughter-in-law of Dr. T. Colin Campbell, considered by many as the science, quote, father of the rapidly growing plant-based nutrition movement. And I double-checked this. Colin Campbell, Dr. Colin Campbell, he's actually the person who coined the term plant-based. So he really is like the father of the plant-based movement. And here Kim is his daughter-in-law. It's just such a beautiful way that everyone sort of fits together while they have their own area of expertise. Kim doing what she does with her husband, Nelson. We talk about how they met and the projects that they're working on, which there is some exciting stuff coming out. I'm just so thrilled for them. So, fueled by her passion for the plant-based nutrition message, Kim has created recipes, food lines, and cookbooks that have helped change the way people view the food they put in their bodies. And Kim and I have a very similar approach to plant-based eating, where it's not this like rigid, there's not a bunch of rigid rules that we have to follow. So she touches on that, which I really appreciate. Kim is just such a remarkable human being. She's doing so much for the plant-based community worldwide and also locally here in the Raleigh, Durham, Hillsborough area. And we talk about how you can get involved with some of the pods, which she talks all about. So I'm going to stop talking and let Kim take over. So please join me in welcoming Kim Campbell to the show. Welcome to the show, Kim.
Hi, Ashley. How are you?
Good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and I'm glad to be on your podcast. So thanks for having me here.
Yeah, I'm thrilled. So for those of you listening, Kim and I actually live probably less than 30 minutes away. I'm in Durham, North Carolina, and y'all are in the Hillsborough area, right?
True. Yep.
Yep. Yeah. So I know that we have a lot of mutual friends, which I want to talk about some of them later on in the show. But before we get to all of that, and before we get to talking about your cookbook, which I cannot wait for, it's coming out this week. Kim, would you mind just giving us a background about yourself and who you are and what you do?
Okay. So my husband started PlantPure Nation. It wasn't called PlantPure Nation, it was just PlantPure in 2010. And my background is teaching. So I was teaching when he was doing immersions in the community. We hired a chef and we were changing people to a whole food plant-based diet pretty quickly. We were doing it in about a week. And I left my teaching job because it was so exciting and climbed on board as the co-chef. He wanted me to be the initial chef, and I said, "Oh, I can't cook for that many people." So I learned a lot, and I've always cooked. That's been something I've done since I was a child. So I learned a lot, and I left my job and I started writing recipes because people needed resources as they were doing this. And we had so much success. And if people haven't already seen PlantPure Nation, I'll give you a little background. We decided to go ahead and do a film and share with people what we were doing in our own hometown. And then Nelson tried to pass some legislation in Kentucky, which was very interesting. And so I think our film tells the story about, it tells the why, but it also tells why do we not know this information? Why is it not prevalent in the doctor's offices? Why is our government not promoting it? So the film really tells that story. So I really recommend that people watch the film. So when he was doing the film, I was back in Hillsborough, North Carolina, and I decided to write a cookbook. I decided to put every recipe that we were using in the jump starts and every recipe that I had ever developed pretty much since I was in high school and put it in a cookbook. I didn't know what I was getting into. So it was a little crazy. We called the publishing company who also published my father-in-law's book, The China Study and Whole, and they were thrilled to take the book. So the first book, and I have it here, I can show it to everybody who's watching, not listening, but it's the green, I call it the green book. And that was kind of our Bible initially. And so when people started going plant-based, this was a resource that we provided. So pretty much my role has been education, helping people, doing cooking classes, working on the recipe site on our website. And now Nelson's writing he's finished another documentary called From Food to Freedom. And I've just been writing cookbooks. I had a second cookbook that came out, and then a third cookbook that comes out December 14th on Amazon. So, I'm kind of a foodie. I always have been. So we can talk about food or we can talk about nutrition. I know you're a dietitian, so that's exciting to me too, because that was my first major in college. So we've also kind of dove into the food side of it. We've developed a frozen line that's in several of the large supermarkets like Publix and Lowe's, and the Wegmans is looking at some of our food. We have developed dry lines, which I'm in the middle of right now. We have a new dry line we hope to have that available when the film comes out, so people can actually cook their own food. So anyways, that's my role at PlantPure in a nutshell.
Beautiful. Well, I have a lot of questions for you after all of that too. So one is, I'm actually kind of curious, I know the listener is too, how did you and Nelson end up connecting with one another? How did you all meet initially?
We met in high school, if you can believe it, a long time ago. We met in 1981. So it's been a while. We met in high school, and I was interested in nutrition even before I met Nelson. So when I met his family and he brought me over to his house, I met his dad, and his dad was sharing what was going on. And with his research, even going back to the Philippines, and that's in the China study as well. So I found that to be very exciting. So it motivated me even more to study dietetics in college. I went on to college, and I was a dietetics dropout, Ashley. So I admire you for what you went through, because after about 2 years, I took all the hard sciences, and then I started taking the nutrition classes, and I was so disillusioned with what they were teaching that I wished I had finished it, but I didn't. I went into education because I was just so frustrated with the message.
Yep.
But I would love to wear your hat.
Yeah. Well, so where were you with your plant-based journey at this time when you were in school? How did that kind of come about?
So after I learned about what a great, how good the vegan diet was for your body and the planet, the animals, I kind of jumped on board, but I wasn't doing it perfect. I mean, that was in college. And so there was still fish and cheddar cheese and pizza and all of that. So I thought I was doing it. And then as we progressed and we got married, we got better and better at it. But, those were the days. We got married in 1987. So think about how many plant-based milks there were at the supermarket, 0 to none. I mean, and I didn't like them. So I still had a little bit of milk in my refrigerator at that point. And then we had our first child in 1991, and I got real serious about cleaning up our act. Then I share this story a lot, and it's in the book Whole. Colin wrote a book called Whole after the China study, and he talks about his wife, Karen, who got melanoma. And when she got the melanoma, it was stage 3. The whole family, why would this happen? She's been doing all the right things. But of course, no one's perfect, right?
Yep.
No one's perfect. So that was when we all got really serious about just cleaning up anything that was animal based and, sugary kind of junk and processed foods, and really, getting our act together. So I would say 2000 is when it was 23 years ago when we got pretty serious about it.
Okay. Yeah.
We didn't wake up overnight plant-based though. We did not.
Yep. And I think that's helpful for people to hear that it wasn't this overnight transformation. It took some time. It took, especially, 20 years ago when, like you said, there weren't a lot of options. It just kind of takes some time to adapt, going from eating the standard American diet, living off of meat, potatoes, and maybe a vegetable for dinner, to really completely changing how you're eating.
Back in 1991, we thought we were being so healthy and doing things the right way. And I look back and I think, not so much.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I think we all have to start somewhere, and we're still not perfect.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. It's a journey, it's an evolution, and you continue to learn and evolve as you go, 100%.
We
Yeah.
could talk about perfection because I listened to a podcast yesterday. I went walking. I wanted to kind of get to know you. And you did a podcast on perfection that I loved.
Oh, yeah.
I
Yep.
loved it. It was a good one.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. So I'm just kind of curious too, what are family dinners like, when you all get together, whether it's for a holiday meal or even like when your kids are home and everything? What's it like, getting everyone together, eating a plant-based meal?
Yeah. Well, like we tend to eat the same things over and over and over. I know I write a lot of different recipes for different cuisines and different taste buds, but we tend to eat, I don't want to say five things, but we tend to eat a lot of the traditional foods like Thanksgiving. We just had Thanksgiving at our house, and plant-based Thanksgiving is probably the easiest meal to create because it's the Thanksgiving we've had over and over. And I have a chapter in the PlantPure Comfort Food Cookbook of some of our favorite Thanksgiving recipes. But we eat a lot of rice and beans, Ashley. We eat potatoes, veggie burgers. I love Italian food. That's one of my favorite genres of food, pizza and lasagna. And I bet we probably eat a lot of the same things.
Yep, I'm sure we do. Yeah. Well, and it's kind of reassuring, I think, especially for people who are transitioning to plant-based. It doesn't have to be these extravagant meals. It really can be just really simple, kind of basic and really affordable foods to make these plant-based meals.
Yes. I think too, teaching people, I know that my father, before he passed away, he decided to become a vegan at the ripe old age of 84, I think.
Wow.
He was, how do I do this? He had that overwhelming moment. And I thought, wow, okay, so I can help you with this. But what I told him to do is, just whatever you love, just take the meat out. So he loved spaghetti and meatballs. So I said, just take the meatballs out and put some portobello mushrooms in there, some extra vegetables. And he loved to go out to eat. So he would go out to eat and order all the sides. So he'd get the collards and he'd get the salad and the potato. So he got really good at doing that. And my mom got really good at just replacing things with plant-based things.
Mm.
She didn't continue it after he passed away, so that was a little bit discouraging. But I tell people that all the time. Just cook what you've been cooking, just tweak it a little bit.
Yep. Yeah. It doesn't have to be this, like you said, big transformation or anything like that. Because you mentioned the documentary PlantPure Nation, I want to touch on that just a little bit. How was it for you and kind of that involvement? Before we even get to that, I want to say if you haven't watched PlantPure Nation, I highly recommend it. I remember just you talked about the legislation. I remember sitting on the edge of my seat as like everyone's voting and just like seeing what was going to come up. So it's a really incredible and very well done film. So for those of you who haven't seen it, I highly recommend watching it. But Kim, what was it like kind of going through that and kind of being a part of it?
It was exciting. It was really exciting. I was home a lot. So Nelson was in Kentucky back and forth, and we still had a high school daughter at that point. So I was home, but I was there during that vote. In fact, that was delayed because Tom Reiner, one of the legislators, had broken his hip. So that was delayed. So I felt like it just took forever to get to that moment. And then we got to that moment. And I was literally picking my fingers apart, thinking I thought it was going to really go one way. I don't know if we should share how it went, but I was so surprised. And then I looked at Nelson after it happened, and I looked at him and I said, "We have a film. We have a story." And so we didn't know. I mean, we had no idea how it was going to turn out. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Because y'all weren't you sitting up there watching?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So when it happened, there was this like, sort of a disappointment. And then we looked at each other and we knew that this is the story, the untold story.
Can you give us or are you allowed to kind of give us a sneak peek of what From Food to Freedom is all about?
Absolutely, absolutely. So we back a year ago when the pandemic, it was a year ago this past fall, so been 2022, no, 2021, sorry. The pandemic has me just kind of, it's like we skipped years of our lives.
Yeah.
But it was about a year into the pandemic, and we decided to do an immersion and with diabetic patients. So we asked Lori Marbus to join us. And I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Lori Marbus, but she's a plant-based doc. And so she came to Greensboro, North Carolina, and we had a beautiful home, and people came and they stayed and they lived with us because it was a live-in immersion. And 6 of them were diabetics. Some of them brought their spouses. We had our film team, and everybody that was there, we fed them. So we had a chef from Pennsylvania, Fernando Peralta. He came and helped me, and we cooked breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 10 days.
Wow.
And the story, the food to freedom, tells the story about these folks and what happened during the live-in immersion. And I see it, I hear it, and it's still, for me, being there with these people, I was just had that aha. I know you would be shocked, even you know what's going to happen, but when it does, you just say, oh my gosh, it's so quick. I won't tell you all the details because that's in there. And then Nelson touches on the pandemic a little bit and some things that were and were not done during the pandemic. It's just a really well done film, but it actually tells the story of the immersion. I want to live in immersions the rest of my life here in Hillsborough.
Yeah.
That's my
I
dream.
bet. Yeah. I mean, because you are literally changing people's lives.
Yeah, just to bring them in and actually live together, actually live the lifestyle. Because I think a lot of people think it's a diet of limitations that you can't eat, and you're eating salads and you're uncomfortable. And when they came to Greensboro, we had people saying this is the best they've eaten in years.
Wow.
And they were full and they enjoyed the food, and we ate a lot of traditional comfort foods, and a lot of the recipes that we fed them are in this cookbook as well. So it was from all angles, it was a success. So
yeah. So we can expect some of that in the film then as well. Yeah, that's exciting. Okay. So going back, you had mentioned kind of earlier that you do the frozen meals, and then what was the term that you used for, was it dry meals?
It's dry meals. So these are packs, and the only way I can describe them is, do you remember, well, you're younger than me, but we had Hamburger Helper. I don't even know if the Helper is still out there. It's kind of like one of our pod leaders said, Elizabeth, she said, for Deanna, she said, it sounds like Healthy Helpers. So we might name it Healthy Helpers. I don't know. We need some ideas for names for this starter brand. But there's 6 different sauces. There's a cheese sauce, an enchilada sauce, there's a curry sauce, and a peanut sauce. And so you just add water or milk, and you have this beautiful sauce. And then we're building sort of an ebook online. So when you buy these dry packs, you can create, well, you can pick a recipe. So there's a cheese sauce you can make, scalloped potatoes, you can make New England chowder, you can make all these other recipes just with that little cheese pack. So it's sort of a healthy helper. It's not the whole meal, but it's a healthy helper.
Yeah.
So I developed those, and I've been working on, we have another chef who's helping us. You probably know Chuck Underwood. He's the brand new vegan. Have you ever heard of him?
Oh, I've heard of him. I can't picture him.
He and I have a very similar style of cooking. I've been following him for years. So I contacted him about a week ago, and I said, would you be interested in working at PlantPure and helping us out a little bit? He was ecstatic. So
I'm sure.
Be my partner for a little while, because I've been living in this, I don't know, abyss. I just all by myself doing things with just Nelson and I. So having another chef, side by side would be great.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. So the frozen meals are whole food plant-based, and you said you can get them in Publix. Is that locally, or where can people find them if they are local or not?
Publix all up and down the East Coast, wherever there's a Publix. Not all the Publix carry our food, but most of them do. We also just put out a line of burritos, call them handhelds, and those are, I think they're going to be coming out at Wegmans. Let's hope.
Nice. Yeah.
I really liked them. I think we have 5 or 6 different type of burritos, and they're also less expensive than the entrees. The entrees are probably going to phase out, and the burritos will be more phased in. but Lowe's grocery store, but most of the grocery stores we're working with are on the East Coast.
So tell me, you mentioned Elizabeth and Deanna, which I get their emails and I want to shout them out because they're both just incredible human beings and I love running into them at local vegan plant-based events. But can you talk to us more about the pods? And for those who are local or even people, because the pods are offered nationwide, right? If someone volunteers.
All over the
Okay.
world. We have pods in
Okay.
Australia. So after we did PlantPure Nation, Nelson's call to action was to get involved in your community, start pods. So we have a nonprofit organization called PlantPure Communities, PPC. And in that, you can go to plantpurecommunities.org. You can find out if there's a pod locally near you. If there is not, you can start a pod. It's not to say that you can't start up a meetup group, but it's kind of nice to have a pod network. We have a pod. Well, Nelson and I had our own pod, but we kind of consolidated with Elizabeth and Deanna. They have a pod in Chapel Hill. So we're kind of we're all sort of leaders. But I tell you what, Elizabeth and Deanna do a beautiful job. I'm going to call them the leaders because they really are. And it's nice because we get people that come from all over. They come from Raleigh. We've had people drive from Virginia to come to our pod meetings, and we have a pod typically. Sometimes we'll show a film. I know a long time ago we did a grocery store tour. I went to the Asian market with a group of people. That was a lot of fun. We clogged up the aisles big time.
I'm sure.
But some people really get into the gardening, and we had a gardener come and speak to our pod. So it just depends on what your pod, what the interests are. You can really do anything. There's resources on plantpurecommunities.org where you can, do square foot gardening, or you can do a restaurant campaign, or whatever your thing is. PlantPure Communities seems to be doing it.
And so people can go online and check to see if there is a pod near them. And if not, there's an option for them to start one if they wanted to.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And if you start one and it's just 2 or 3 people, that's okay too.
Yeah.
But I urge people, go to PlantPure Communities. That's a great place to start. But check out the meetups. There's all kinds of the Veg Fest communities. They're usually on Facebook. I don't know if you've been involved in our local Veg Fest, but there's a lot of activity here in North Carolina, and there's a lot of activity across the country. So really dig deep, because sometimes just being supported and being supported by your people is really important.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. We talk a lot about how going plant-based or vegan can sometimes feel isolating, especially if you don't have anyone immediate that maybe understands why you're doing what you're doing. And so it can be helpful to seek out communities like these pods, or like you're saying, go to meetup groups or Veg Fest, where there's just nothing like being surrounded by a bunch of like-minded people who support your lifestyle. There's just something really invigorating about it. So like you said, whether it's a few people, 2 or 3 people, or a larger group, it can be really invaluable to your plant-based journey.
It's a reminder, right? It's a reminder.
Mhm.
Oh, this is why I'm doing this. It's a
Yeah.
motivator. It's a lot. It doesn't mean that, we only want to hang out with people who eat the way we do, but it's just, for me, it's a reminder. Oh, I have those aha moments, and it just kind of keeps you focused on what's important. Because, if you're around a lot of people and they don't support you and they think you're kind of nuts because you're eating plant-based, after a while they can get discouraging. So I think having those groups and those places to go is a reminder.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we'll include the link to PlantPure Community below. So if you want to just check to see if there is one near you, you can definitely do that just really easily. All right, Kim, so let's jump into the cookbook. So it's called PlantPure Comfort Food, over 100 plant-based and mostly gluten-free recipes to nourish your body and soothe your soul. So what went behind kind of the title of it and went into some of the recipes?
So I think I'm a comfort food cook. I mean, that goes all the way back to my first cookbook, but this one even more so. I did this cookbook during the pandemic. Nelson and I love to go out for dinner every week. That's our sort of date night. And we stopped doing that. So I was cooking a whole lot more. We were eating a whole lot more too. That was our pleasure. So I was developing recipes, and then we had this idea, let's do cook-along shows. So I don't know if you know that we did that. We started early on in the pandemic. Every Thursday night, we turned our cameras on at our office and we cooked live. I would send people the recipes, and I would send them the grocery list, and we cooked together. And I realized about 2 months into it, I had testers. I had built-in testers for this cookbook. So almost every recipe, not every recipe, but a lot of the recipes in here, we cooked along together. And I had
Wow.
people emailing me, they like this, they don't like that. Why don't you try this? And so that was really helpful. And then I contacted the publishing company and I said, I think I've got a cookbook and I think this is a good one. So my theme was comfort food around the world, because I like a lot of cuisines. I love Mexican food and I like Indian food, Middle Eastern food. So I tried to find what's the most comforting, what's the most traditional food within that culture. So this cookbook has things like Spanish paella, muhammara, which is a Middle Eastern dish, falafels. It has, I'm trying to think, some Asian dumplings, just a lot of sort of international food, but international comfort food. And so the title, we were kind of unsure about where to go with the title. So we just went with the plain old comfort food. So that is how it happened. And it happened pretty fast because we had the recipes when we went to the publishing company, and from there it was just mostly editing. We had a photographer, which is phenomenal. Do you have the cookbook? Did they send it to you?
They sent a digital copy.
Okay, so you see the pictures.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I wish I could say I did those pictures, but I did not. We hired Nicole Axworthy. She did all the photographs, and they were just beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, they are. They're stunning. So what goes into that for those of us who aren't familiar with what goes into creating a cookbook? I mean, are you creating every single recipe and then, she's kind of there taking photos, or how does that work?
So I created all the recipes. And then when I hired her to do the photography, I sent her the recipes and I sent her a picture of every recipe. So when we were doing the cook-alongs and when I'm posting recipes online, I take my own pictures and I sent her the picture. So this is what the dumplings are going to look like, and loaded nachos, for example. So she did a pretty good job. As far as how I develop a recipe, I go to a lot of traditional creators, Bobby Flay and Giada, and I go all around the world, and I love YouTube. So I'm sort of a foodie that way. And then I look at traditional recipes and I figure out how to make replacements. And I replace it with plant-based foods and things like jackfruit and lentils and soy curls and all sorts of things. And I have a New England chowder in the first cookbook, and I just took the clams out and I put more mushrooms in, and I put some pearl tapioca in, and you have New England chowder. So
yeah, we talk about that a lot, especially for people who it's challenging maybe to give up their like childhood favorite dishes that aren't plant-based. It's just like, just see if there's a few ingredients that you can swap out to make it plant-based.
Yeah.
So for someone who is looking to get this cookbook and is excited to get started, is there any specific place that you would recommend them start when they get your cookbook? Or any recipe that you're just particularly fond of?
Oh, I like a lot of them, but I'm sort of a moody eater, so I guess it depends on the day. But I love the lasagna stew. There's some amazing desserts in this. There's a grasshopper.
Ooh, yes.
They're amazing. If you like sweets, and I'm not one that really goes to sweets a lot, but I don't know, I just sort of dove into it with this cookbook. It has a lot of really nice desserts. There's a Boston cream pie, which is that's kind of my love story with Nelson. It's how I would say how I nabbed him.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah, so there's a lot of desserts. There's lasagna stew, there's Asian dumplings. I would say my favorite is probably the Asian dumplings. I do tamales too. I don't know. It really just depends on the day and the mood.
Yep. Yeah, which is good because we have a lot of intuitive eaters in here where that kind of go by based on like, okay, what sounds good this week or what sounds good today? So I think that's perfect to kind of go based on how you're feeling and what the weather is like outside.
One of the things that I think this book stands out from a lot of vegan books is we don't use oil. I don't use any processed oils. Partly, because it's a processed food. There's no nutrients in oils. You can get your oils through nuts and seeds and avocados and things like that. So I rely more on whole foods, We don't use a lot of processed foods. I can't say we don't ever use, plant-based cheeses in our house. And on occasion, when the kids come over, I'll do stuff like that. But for the most part, we don't use any oil, and the cookbook doesn't have any oil. Minimal salts and sugars. We're definitely not SOS free. And that was you have an interesting perspective on that too, because I listened to your podcast. So my father-in-law says there's no research around, why we wouldn't flavor our food with salts and sugars a little bit. So I do that.
Yeah.
So I think this book sort of stands out because it's not so extreme that the food tastes like paste. Got a lot of flavor, and I show people, here's how I use salts and sugars. So it's a little different that way.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, still a lot of flavor, packs a punch, but also very friendly to those who maybe don't want to use as much salt or sugar, or who are gluten-free or don't want to use oil.
Right. Most of the recipes are gluten-free because that seems to be a thing now. A lot of people that have gluten sensitivities. So, and I don't eat a lot of gluten, so that was easy for me to do.
Yep, absolutely. And Kim, it is amazing once you start cooking with less oil or just stop using oil at all. It's amazing how easy it is and how you really don't need it or don't miss it.
You can saute your onions and garlic with veg broth or a little bit of water or wine or whatever you're cooking with. It's very easy. And then when you go back to a restaurant and they're using a lot of oils, boy, it really, really hits you.
It does.
Yeah, I'm just not used to it. We've been without it for so long that when we go out to eat, I definitely feel a little heavy.
Yes. That I would say that's probably my number one struggle with going out too is the quantity of oil that's used, where the food might taste really good, but then afterwards it's like, ooh, I don't feel so good, or I feel a little sluggish.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And we're going to start doing some live shows again. We just made that decision to do our first show tomorrow. Tomorrow's Thursday, but we were going to do them live like we did before, because that's always fun. It's always fun to watch somebody create something live and make mistakes and improvise and all of that. But we have such poor internet in our home that I think we're going to pre-tape them. I'll let people know when we're going to share them with people, but whatever we do, I'll be on live so I can answer questions as the video goes on. So
Okay.
hoping to do that every week. That's my passion, is teaching people how to do this.
Yeah. Well, that's sometimes the hardest part. Is it's easy to get the ingredients, or it might be easy to plan, but to actually follow through and make the recipe, that can be challenging.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you'll be doing like live streaming videos using the recipes from your cookbook.
Yes. Well, from any cookbook. And I might just make some brand new ones. That's what I did during the pandemic. Just showing people how to do little things. Like you talked about sauteing mushrooms and onions and baking potatoes, just doing some real basic things too. And I like to show people products that we like. If it's, I'm sure you know about soy curls, but I love to share that with people because they're very unique. I like to show people techniques that make working in the kitchen a little easier. I like to share my appliances because I have a lot of those.
I'm sure. Do you have any favorite appliances or any appliances that you use most frequently?
No, well, I pretty much use my blender a lot. That's probably my most used appliance, my blender and my food processor. But I just bought a Ninja Creamy. I don't know if you know about them.
I've heard of them. Yes, from Kathy Hester.
Yes, in fact, I took her class and went through some of her stuff, but it's amazing. I was an ice cream hound, and that was the last thing I gave up when I went plant-based. And then I went to sorbet, and then all the products that they have in the grocery store full of oils and sugars. So I love my Ninja Creamy, and it's probably the closest to real ice cream that I've ever had.
Wow, that's amazing. I've heard a lot of good things about it.
I think I should work for Ninja Creamy. I think I should be an affiliate or something,
I
because
mean,
I push this thing on everybody.
yes, yeah, you definitely should. PlantPure Comfort Food comes out December 14th, which is just around the corner. So if you're listening to this the day this episode comes out, that is just in a couple days, which is really exciting. Where can people find it? We're obviously going to include some links below, but where are some of the best places people can find the cookbook?
Amazon right now. I think that's, as far as I know, Barnes and Noble will be carrying it too.
So perfect for a last minute Christmas gift for anyone who put it off.
For Christmas. Yeah, yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
And if you like PlantPure Comfort Food, there's other cookbooks too. I recommend you have all of them because every single one has brand new recipes. There's no repeats, except for maybe a dressing here and there, but all new recipes. So grand total, I think we've got almost 400 recipes.
Wow.
Close to it in the 3 books. This particular book has about 100, a little over 100.
Okay. Yep. So there you go. You have all 3 cookbooks. You're set to go for really a couple of years.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, Kim, is there anything that you're looking forward to going into 2023?
I am really passionate about these immersions, just bringing people into our community. And I was excited to hear that we have a dietitian locally who might want to get involved in our immersions. We would love to have you at least speak to our immersion participants. So our goal is to bring people into Hillsborough. We have a place where they would stay and live for 7 days. We would have a doctor on board checking their continuous glucose monitors. I forgot to mention that we had continuous glucose monitors on our participants at all times. So we saw exactly how they were reacting to foods, what was happening in the night. It was very fascinating. So we'll be doing that. We'll have speakers. There'll be a lot of fun activities and lots of great food. So we'll keep everybody posted when those immersions are going to happen. That's my dream job. That's what I would want to retire doing.
Oh, I think that's beautiful. Well, good. Well, Kim, if people want to connect with you or learn more about PlantPure and everything that you're doing, what are some of the best places for them to do that?
Okay, I'll send you the links and we can share those links. So you can go to PlantPure Nation. We have an Instagram page and we have a Facebook page, PlantPure Nation. I have my own Facebook page, PlantPure Chef, on Facebook and Instagram. So we had somebody that was working all of those social media sites, but now I'm the one doing it. So any one of those places you go, you'll find me. You can message me. We have a YouTube channel, PlantPure TV YouTube.
Well, we will include all those links in the show notes for you listening, if you want to just go and connect with Kim or just learn more about PlantPure, we'll have all those links below for you. So Kim, thank you so much for coming on and just sharing more about PlantPure and your upcoming cookbook, which comes out in a couple days, December 14th, which the link for that will also be below. Just thank you again for coming on the show and sharing your story.
Thank you for having me. It's really nice to meet you too.
Thank you for listening, and we will catch you next time. Until next time, keep thriving.